viewers of the Civic Space TV, friends of the community show, welcome to yet another episode of the community show. Like I always do, I give a brief background regarding our conversation for this week. And let me just take you back into a historical perspective. World over, be it Uganda, be it Europe, be it anywhere that you might go, the aspect of peace stands out tall as a core and fundamental aspect of building society, of building economies, but also building political stability in any country. So what this means is that everyone, both at personal, at family level, we all desire to be peaceful or to be at peace, both with yourself, because we know that man is always at constant conflict. So you have to, or you desire to be at peace with your own self, but also we desire to be at peace with our family members, but also at peace with the society and also the world at large. So the point is that peace is a very important aspect. So today, the community show finds it very prudent to have a conversation around how do we build peaceful communities? Because you know that it is through communities that we build the bigger society of a nation, and it is through a nation that we build the bigger association of continents and then of the globe. So we must start by building peace at community level. So today, the community show will have a conversation around peace building. And I'm joined, of course, by a panel of distinguished 3 gentlemen and a single lady that I shall introduce to you and ask them to just say hello to our viewers in this particular afternoon. Let me begin by a friend of mine, someone who I have been privileged to meet over time. And this is Gerald Barekye. Gerald, you're most welcome. Gerald is the National Coordinator of Young Peace Ambassadors. Gerald, many thanks for joining us on the community show.
Thank you, Moses. Hello, our viewers. As Moses said, Gerald Barekye is my name. I'm National Coordinator Young Peace Ambassadors under Coalition for Action on 1325, and also founder Peace Builders Coalition, which is a peace building initiative in Ntungamo district. I'm very happy to be hosted again on this platform, and I wish we shall share more as we go on. Thank you, Moses.
Yeah, thank you very much, Gerald. And it is glad that you're becoming a very frequent or regular panelist on the Civic Space TV. But I believe that is because you always have something to offer these conversations. The second panelist is a friend of mine, someone who invited me for last year's Idi Ifitil dinner. I'm not sure if my pronunciation is correct, but this is none other than Nuwagaba Kaduyu. Kaduyu is a peace practitioner and a humanitarian. Kaduyu, do you remember that you did invite me for the last year's iftar dinner?
Yeah, I remember so well, and I'm so happy that you attended. Hi, everyone. Happy to be here with you guys. Looking forward to the discussion.
Yeah, many thanks, Mr. Kaduyu. The only lady on the panel, Lucky Ninsiima. Lucky has actually been hosted before. I'm not sure what conversation it was, but Lucky, I'm sure you've been to Civic Space TV before. Lucky is the country coordinator of CYPAN Uganda. Lucky, you're most welcome. Kindly say hello to our viewers.
Hello, Civic Space viewers. Glad to be hosted again. My name is Lucky Ninsiima. I'm the country coordinator for Commonwealth Youth Peace Ambassadors Network Uganda, where I also happen to be the training coordinator of the same network. I'm so glad to be here. Looking forward to learning more. Thank you.
Wow, many thanks for joining us, Lucky. The last panelist on the show is Mr. Tigma Ramson Yipo. Yipo is a founder or director of Global Peace and Leadership Academy. Ramson, many thanks for joining us. I understand that you've joined us all the way from a different country, and it is glad that you've made the time to join us in this conversation. And kindly say hello to our viewers and maybe something more that you'd love to say about yourself before we can begin the show officially.
All right. Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for the opportunity. I mean, I'm so excited to be meeting with these great mind people on this platform. I am reaching you all the way from Cameroon, and I'm very glad for the invitation. And just like you likely said, I'm the founder and director of Global Peace and Leader Academy. This is an academy that is raising forth peace advocate and responsible leaders. So I'm very happy to be here, and I wish to share knowledge with us all, because I believe as a trainer, as a coach, the more you know, the more you actually know that you don't know, and the more you want to know more. So thank you. I believe in due time we will get to know more. Thank you.
Wow, what an amazing way to begin the conversation. Let me just begin with you, Mr. Kaduyu. Kaduyu, let me ask a very naive question. Yeah, and assuming that our audience has some naive people, let me just put this naive question to you. Why is peace important? I mean, is it important anyway? Why should we be here to discuss the necessity of building a peaceful society? What is there in peace for the people of either Uganda or the people of Africa or the people of the world? So let us begin with you, Mr. Kaduyu, then we shall pick it up from there.
Yeah, thank you so much, Mr. Comrade Kidega. Well, that's, I think, a question that almost everyone can probably answer, because we know we need peace when we actually don't have it. You know, it's hard for people to understand the need of peace until they don't have it, until things turn upside down, and they realize that there is need to actually come together and speak and do things that bring them together to promote peace and work together towards achieving sustainable peace. All over the world, we see that when there is breakdown in the structural systems that promote peace, there is always a tendency of having a spiral effect around the world. That when something happens elsewhere, there is always a tendency that it will affect almost everyone across the globe. For example, like the war in Ukraine today, you know, you see it's very distant, you know, thousands and thousands of miles away from Uganda, but we see the effects are trickling in, you know, in Uganda, and we see the rising prices in commodities, fuel, and everything. And you think about the ordinary person, you know, down in Ujiri, for example, how they cannot access their markets, how they cannot afford to buy the basic, you know, goods and services because of the war in Ukraine, you know. And when there is a breakdown in all these systems and structures that contribute to peace, we know that nothing can happen when it comes to, you talk about social progression, talk about development, investment and everything. You cannot talk about that when there is no peace. And, you know, when you look at the Global Peace Index, they tell us that to know that peace is important, you know, in societies where there is, the societies that are peaceful tend to have more economic opportunities. So it is important that we create peace so that we talk about flourishing, we talk about development, we talk about all the other socio-economic progress that we always aspire to have in our communities. Yeah, on a personal level, you know, when you talk about personal, relational, structural, and cultural, peace is always important in all those dimensions. So, you know, talk about spiritual growth, for example, as a person, you know, you cannot spiritually grow in a violent environment. So you need a peaceful environment. I'll give you an example. When Prophet Muhammad, I'll talk from a spiritual perspective now. When Prophet Muhammad was to be sent in Mecca, Allah tells Muhammad that he had to first pacify Mecca and make it a very peaceful community so that the message of Islam can flourish, the message of peace. And that exactly happens almost in the same other kind of religion. So we need peace so that all the other dimensions of life can flourish. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Let me go to Mr. Barekye. Barekye, I know that you are a young entrepreneur, yeah, at least from the past experience that I've had to interact with you, but also from the reading of your own biography. So can we try to have or to create a link between peace and entrepreneurship? How does your entrepreneurship, you as Barekye, or the many Ugandans out there, or the many Africans who are actually participating in enterprising activities, how does peace, where is the connection between peace and entrepreneurship? Barekye, on to you.
Okay, thank you, Moses. And as you have said, specifically, I'm in two fields, peace building and entrepreneurship. Professionally, I'm a farmer, so that's why I can't go far away from entrepreneurship. So briefly, what I can say, there is no entrepreneur that can succeed when there is no peace. In other words, there is no development that can take place in absence of peace. So peace is a key factor in achieving each and everything. From my perspective, since 2020, I've been in peace building. I got a chance to be trained by one of the biggest organizations, called Coalition for Action 1325. So that's where I attended the training, where 4 districts were represented. And I got a chance to be elected as a national coordinator to lead all those districts. Currently, I'm leading 5 districts where we have our peace building organizations that are youth-led, and I'm the one coordinating all the activities they are doing. So when it comes to peace building, I think I've done a lot. I've trained, I have involved many youth, and I've tried to make sure that I convince them to come on board and at least give their contribution as far as developing this country is concerned. Going back to what you had asked, peace is very important, as my comrade said, and what I can emphasize now is in absence of peace, there is no business that can go on. My colleague gave an example of what is happening in Ukraine, how it has affected business around. And you know, with this increasing unemployment rate in Uganda, we as peace builders, we are finding it as a challenge because most of the youth, they are redundant. So that's why we find that 78% of the violence that happens in this country, we find the youth at the forefront. And you ask yourself, why does this happen? I can see, for example, Moses, if you are there, if you finish university, now 2 years, you have not get where to be seated, you have nothing you are doing, and I call you, I give you some money to go and cause chaos. Do you think you can refuse? Of course you can't. So what I can say, in every society, in every community, for it to succeed, we need peace. Currently, I don't know if most of the people are not aware about United Nations Resolution Security Council on 2250, which is about youth, peace, and security. It is an agenda specifically targeting youth to get involved in these peace building activities. And currently, we have been seeing the resolution 1325 on women, peace, and security, which have been implemented in the country, but which brings women on board to give their contribution as far as peace building is concerned. And as youth, currently, personally, I'm advocating for Youth, Peace, and Security Action Plan. We don't have action plan. By the way, in Africa, it is only Nigeria that has an action plan. And we are trying with some youth in Uganda to make sure that we also have an action plan, so that because this agenda will bring together all the youth in this country, so that they can give their contribution as far as building peace is concerned.
Okay, thank you very much, Gerald. That was very elaborate. Patricia, let me come to you. And hopefully, sorry, Lucky, let me come to you and hope you're still with us. Lucky, are you there?
Yes, I am.
Great. Now, Lucky, my question to you is actually one that is very simple. If you look at Uganda's history, and this is recognized in the preamble of our constitution, we do recognize that our history is one that has been filled with turbulence and insecurity and, all that we have either read that or that we know about, you know, from the NRA war, you go to the Kabaka crisis. I mean, so many instances of insecurity and of unpeaceful state. So maybe to the viewers out there, in your own words, what do you think are the major causes of instability? What do you think interrupts peace in society? What to you has been the most outstanding causes of disruption of peace in the Ugandan society? Yes, we shall make it broader to the African context, but let us begin with the Ugandan perspective, because that is where I believe you speak with authority. So what, in your view, do you think is a fundamental cause of instability and lack of peace in Uganda, but also in the broader context of Africa?
Thank you, Moses. Thank you, fellow panelists and the viewers out there. I may not be so much conversant with the history of this nation and especially what caused the conflicts. But what I've learned with time is that there is a challenge whereby we try to put everyone in one box. We want to categorize people according to us, other than categorizing people according to them narrative. So we are all individuals with different experiences and different upbringing and different identities. But what happened is that I want what I believe to be the same thing that Moses will believe, and I want Moses to act the same way I will act. So I think that is the aspect whereby we end up conflicting with the ideas. We have failed to embrace the fact that we are different, we think different, we act different. And what happens is that there is conflict of interest. Much as I know that promoting peace is quite a challenge, especially in the community, but it takes an individual. I don't want us to look at it as a nation. I want us to look at it as me, as you. What are you doing as you that is promoting peace at your personal level before we look at the community and the nation? Because we are the community and we are the nation. If I promote peace, you promote peace, another person promotes peace, we shall have a peaceful community. And that will come back to me standing for the community, not necessarily standing for myself. In that way, a community will live in peace and harmony, respecting everyone's rights and freedoms. Because I know that Moses believes a certain way and lives a certain way. So he has the right and the freedom to do what he believes in, provided it is not a crime or something. But that won't mean that I can't live as I believe. Let me put it to the religious perspective, if I may say. I have to respect the Muslims to do as they believe, and I have to respect the SDAs to do as they believe, because that is what makes them. That is what gives them the identity. Me as a Christian, I won't be saying that the Buddhists are wrong. No, that is what gives them the identity. What I'm saying is this: if we all value and respect each other's identity, and instead of fighting, we learn about them and actively engage with them at their different level and at my different level, then we shall have respectful people, respecting each other's religious beliefs, respecting each other's nationality, respecting each other's culture, respecting each other's career, and people themselves. That way, we want to miss the opportunity to bond. We want to miss the opportunity to build relationships and friendships. And then in there, we will find a common goal and interest, which is to build a peaceful community. So unless we learn to the art of thinking differently, we won't have a united community. I submit.
Wow, thank you, Lucky. I am glad that you've individualized this, because I think that one by one makes a bundle. So if we are to have peace at community level, then I think you make a very strong argument to say that what role are you playing as an individual? Even before we look at what society has to play as a whole what are you doing as an individual in terms of, building peace, and then, in terms of fostering, good relations with your neighbor. I think that's a good way to put it. Ramson, let me come to you right away. Yes, you're on the other side of the continent, but I mean, we are still one, and the issues that affect us here in Uganda, I don't think they are very different from those that affect you in Cameroon. So the question then is that, and I'll just try to duplicate what I just asked Lucky, is that in your own perspective, what do you think are the most outstanding causes of lack of peace in societies? Do you agree with Lucky's analysis of the argument of trying to put people in the same context, putting us all in the same sense of belief, but rather let us liberalize, let everyone do what they believe is good for them. So what is your own perspective around the major causes of instability and why people find themselves at conflicts from time and again?
Okay, thank you so much for that question, and thank all the panelists so much. Talking about the effect or the causes of instability, that's a threat to peace. You will bear with me, just like the other panelists said, she is right. For us to actually build peace, it has to start with you as an individual. And so the causes of peace, actually, when you look into the African context, you will see that one of the key things that is a threat to peace in Africa is the lack for the respect of the rule of law. We find ourselves in situations where governments, institutions, they set laws, binding laws, that these laws are to govern an institution. And at the end of the day, you see that those who set those laws are the same people breaching that law. And every day you see that they keep reviving the law. They keep reviving the law. Maybe their personal interest, or maybe for the interest of a particular group that is in control of those laws. And because of that, those who keep reviving those laws, they are already against and above the law. Because in a society where there is respect for the rule of law, when nobody is subjected to the law, when nobody is above the law, peace is bound to reign. Because in a situation where, let's say, the law have been breached, and maybe the person who breached that law is bound to be punished according to those laws, you see that there is peace in that community. Another thing that causes that act as a threat to peace is the lack of respect for multiculturalism. Excuse me. We again find ourselves in a situation where people are moving from one place to another, and everybody or people have their different cultures, people have their different beliefs. And for instance, you find yourself in let's say, in another community. You are a visitor in that community. And if your culture, if your belief is not being respected in that setting, in that community where you find yourself, you will be striving as much as you can to see that you try to be at peace. And find yourself in some communities where they want to go as far as even sending you off that community. Because of that, when there is no respect for people's communities, for multiculturalism, there is bound to be conflict, and that is a threat to peace. Another situation is lack of mutual understanding. That is also something that brings about conflict. That is a threat to peace. When people are unable to mutually understand themselves, when people are unable to mutually understand, to mutually accept ideas, because there are some situations in which people always want their own ideas to be heard. They always want to overshadow the ideas of other people. And because of that,
they see other people's idea as maybe a threat to their own ideas. And because there is no understanding between them, there is bound to be conflict. And that is also a threat to peace. You also have situations of lack of accountability. You see, for instance, I want to say this in the context of a country. For instance, let's say a minister or a group of ministers are in charge of certain sectors in the economy. And they say, you are being assigned to carry on this special task to see that it meets the need of these particular people within the community. At the end of the day, you are unable to give account of your actions, of what you did in that community. Those people in that community, they are not satisfied. And you being not able to give account of your actions, that is already a cause for conflict. And even aside that, when you look at some of what most of our African leaders do, they employ more of military power into combating certain things that could be mutually talked on when it was being maybe on a round table. But they employ force, and at the end of the day, they are unable to be accountable for their actions. So those are some of the things that are a threat to peace when it comes to our African context, and more, as we will be seeing in a few minutes ahead. Thank you so much.
Wow. Many thanks, Comrade Ramson. That was very elaborate from you. To our viewers, if you're joining us for the first time, please feel free to go to the comment section and put your comments. But also, we shall spare 20 minutes at the end for me to, take in your questions from the audience. So if you're in the audience, put your questions in the chat section. I will surely read the questions to the panelists, and they'll surely give you a response in due course. But also, there is some valuable information that has been shared on the chat room by our panelists. So please feel free to check the chat room, put your questions, and also get any relevant information that you might need from there. Let me come to you, Mr. Kaduyu. Kaduyu, the African context, Uganda and many African countries, our social fabric is built on our cultures. We have very strong cultural beliefs. We have very strong cultural sentiments and practices. And this is not by design. It is an intrinsic. It is a natural a setup of African societies. We have very strong cultural values and norms. But some of these cultural values have actually been, if I'm to say, they've been catalyzers of insecurity. Cultures, if you go in the deep villages of say Karamoja, where the culture is that for me to be seen as someone who has respect in society, I must have as many herds of cattle as possible. And to them, the culture is to get this cattle, you don't need to go and work, you don't need to go and buy this cattle, but you just need to get your bow and arrow and go and raid someone else's cattle. And therefore, we have seen conflict uprising from some of these cultural practices. So I want you to give us, from your own view, an analysis of how much culture and how much customary practices in Uganda and in Africa have played a role towards either building peace or breaking peace in society. So the floor is you, Mr. Kaduyu. The floor is yours, rather, Mr. Kaduyu.
Thank you so much, Comrade Dan. And I agree with you 100% that in some way, our cultural practices, religious practices, whatever it is, have played a role in promoting violence. And you see, of course, when you look at the countries, for example, in sub-Saharan Africa, you realize that almost 23 countries, have had violence where religion or those cultural practices have played a critical role. When you look at Rwanda, for example, you look at Somalia, you look at South Sudan, there is a pattern of violence where religion or cultures play a role in promoting violence. And it's very sad that extremists or people who are self-seekers tend to rally about these ethnic cultural ideals to mobilize, young people to take up arms and fight and everything. But it's also because that some communities have failed to understand that our communities are now becoming more diverse, and I think my friend raised it, that the lack of respect for multiculturalism, that when communities now come together, we have to look at each other as brothers and sisters, not as enemies, because today people are afraid of sharing because they think that the other one is a threat to their own existence. And with the way how we have become so globalized, the world is very shrunken right now, that it's very hard for you to claim superiority over anyone, that my culture is superior than the other culture. My religion is superior than the other religion. That at this particular moment does not work. What works is how best do we have mutual respect, how best do we dialogue, how best do we reach out to each other to learn from each other, and how have we developed the cultural competence to understand the other and respect them the way they are, so that we shed off some of the cultural practices that threaten our peaceful coexistence. And I think, for example, in Uganda, the time has come where we really need to talk, to dialogue. Someone said that we are a country that is inherently drawn towards violence, because we have learned over time that violence actually works. When people fight, they get power. And I think it has been inbuilt in even young people, with the way the media dramatizes violence. It has been so desensitized in the young people's minds that they believe violence actually works. And peace is one boring thing, and you can see recently when the president, for example, say that some of these peace, peace education is irrelevant and everything like that. But at the same time, we know that peace is an important aspect that we must learn and teach our children to appreciate. Appreciate the other person, to respect the other person the way they are. If there are cultural differences and also cultural practices that threaten peaceful coexistence, how do we learn to shed such cultures of our mainstream, cultures? So I believe, like you said, religion, or even cultures and tribes and everything that we can talk about have played a very big role in promoting violence, but also at the same time they are very, very critical in promoting peace. Because in one of the articles I've shared, I highlight how religions, churches and mosques and everyone, all these institutions can work together to promote peace and inspire a generation of young people who are, who have an enlightened mind and inspired, actions that bring people together and promote peaceful coexistence through dialogue, through working together, collaboration, and all those aspects that bring about peace in our communities. Thank you.
Wow, Mr. Kaduyu. Thank you very much. And I'll just pick it up from where you've stopped. And one of the key statements that you've made is that inspire a generation that understands the value of peace. And this is where I bring in Mr. Barekye. Barekye, when Nuwagaba says that inspire a generation that understands peace, you belong to the current generation, the new firebrands, the young people, the future of this country. And what Mr. Kaduyu is saying, that we must inspire the likes of Barekye to believe that peace is a necessity. And I think this is a valid argument, because when you look at the perpetrators or the actors in violence, the actors in all these instances of insecurity. When maybe we see conflict maybe in Kampala, maybe between the police and maybe given citizens. And if you to follow up closely, these are mainly young people. They are the ones who are being used to orchestrate and to manifest and to actually put action into play of violence. So what is your own view? Do you think, because I think it was you who mentioned that young people are gullible because of the economic situation, that at times they participate or they are implementers of violence because, you know, of the economic situation. They end up accepting 2,000, 5,000, so they can go and burn a tire on the streets of Kampala. So do you think that there is urgent need to address, first of all, the economic situation in the country so that young people, if they are economically stable, when you offer them your 5,000 to go and maybe beat up someone, they'll say, no, 5,000 isn't worth my time, because I mean, after all, I am pursuing an economic activity that, you know, that I would rather give my time to. So the issue of the economic status, do you think it has played a role towards encouraging violence? And how best do you think we can address it moving forward? Mr. Barekye.
Thank you, Moses, for that wonderful question. What I can say, Moses, the most violent person in this world is a poor person. When you are poor, you have no choices other than joining these bad acts. You can imagine, most have been dealing in, at Peace Builders Coalition, we deal in conflict analysis and resolution. And most of the cases we'll be handling, they are from these families, our rural families, where you find that their levels of income are low. The parents have failed to raise school fees for children to go back to school. And now what happens when children are seated home? They begin now talking to their parents that, you look, can you give me my portion? So you find that conflict at family level, where a kid of 10 years is telling a father to give him a land to go and buy maybe borders plus, and that's where the conflict begins from. So poverty has contributed much when it comes to these violence conflicts we are seeing today. And peace building, as my colleague said, it begins at family level, at individual level. I have been on ground most of the time, and what I found out, the conflicts that are happening today at community level, at the national level, youth are at the forefront. Take an example in 2021 general election. You were so observant. You see how youth were used. Someone has told you, don't go to streets, I will kill you. But someone says, I will have to go there. What is lacking? Do you think people even understand what peace building means? Do you even think that we have reached an extent of appreciating what peace means? I don't think. I have been interacting with, I'm running some projects in Great Lakes region where I have got a chance to interact with youth from DRC, Rwanda, and Tanzania. Youth in DRC, what they are talking about, you find that 10% of them, they understand what peace building means. And when I bring it back, I narrow it back to this count of hours. There are very few people who are involved in this work of peace building, very few. And you ask yourself, where are we heading? From what happened in 2021 general election, it would be an eye-opener. The country would have put specific fund to run these campaigns of peace building across the country. People lost their children, their sons and daughters. Some of them have not traced where they are as of now. And the country is just quiet about peace building. What I can tell you, the costs of war are very high compared to the costs of peace building. What do I mean? The government has put peace building at the forefront if we want to see our country developing. Because what is coming now, if we have high unemployment rates, we shall see most of the people joining these groups. In Africa, you find that most of these movements that have come out to speak, you find that 80% of them be youth. And you ask yourself why? Because they are not involved in these activities that are positive, and they find themselves with no option rather than joining these bad acts. Now, when I come back to my colleagues talked about the drivers of violence and conflicts, and I can clearly say, once we tackle this poverty and we tackle this corruption that is killing our country, we shall be in good position to go. Now, what do we need to do? First and foremost, the civil society organizations, the government, we have to work together and make a coalition to build a sustainable peace in this country. We have to go like what Civic Space is doing, what CCG is doing. We have to go on ground and find out what is causing all this. Moses, I can tell you, people in villages are suffering. Alcoholism is increasing at a high rate. I remember, I don't remember where the year, but in Ntungamo district, we reached an extent where the RDC set drinking hours because it was too much. Why should someone go at bar at 7 a.m. in the morning? What do you think? Now, what happens when he drinks from morning until evening? That is poverty we're talking about. Someone has nothing to do. So when he's moving around and he gets a chance, someone calls them, they go and join. And in the evening, fights begin at home. So civil society organization and government, we come together. And again, we need to spread information about what peace building means. From the beginning, I talked about youth, peace and security, which is United Nations agenda. That will make youth appreciate what peace means. I've worked with many women in implementation of women, peace and security. It has carved out gender-based violence. It has empowered women with knowledge and skills. It has given women platform to speak what is affecting them. So once we embrace this youth and peace and security agenda, personally, I have read it, I've appreciated it, but unfortunately, you find in the country, out of 78% of young people, you find like 10% know about it. Even the elders, they don't know about it. And they just put it as a secondary. As from when I said, we can't achieve anything in an unstable world, in an unstable country. Once we work together, once we form coalitions, once we appreciate each and everyone's idea. Because most of the time you have found out that there is some intergenerational gap between the young and old. You find that the elderly people have not appreciated the contribution we young people can give to the development of this country. And most of the time you find we are neglected when it comes to decision-making tables. You find that youth, we have no people to represent us there. And even those who go there, as corruption is killing everything, they tend even to be silent and not speak. Recently, when I was in DRC, we were debating about the East African community. When one colleague from Tanzania shared about how in East Africa, we don't have a youth representative at the East Africa Parliament. So you can imagine big body, but we have no representative there. So I'm trying to narrow this, bring to youth, because I've worked with youth, and statistics say youth are always on the forefront in each and every violence that happens. Once we tackle youth, once we bring them on board and give them direction, because they are not informed, we do things not knowing what will happen after. So once we narrow this, once we bring youth on board, the moment they are in good direction to make sure that they give their contribution, I'm telling you, we shall achieve sustainable peace in Uganda and across the world.
Yes, thank you, Comrade Barekye. Lucky, let me bring you in. We have looked at the youth angle, but let's bring in the gender issue, the gender angle, yeah? And whereas it is important that the youth abstain from all these, acts that perpetrate violence and things like that, I think there is a concern about the women as well. I was reading a report by UNICEF, yeah, UNICEF, which is a United Nations agency, that indicated that 25% of women between 15 and 49 report issues of gender-based violence and sexual violence in their respective families. So it looks like, and this has been proven, that the women are at the receiving end of violence and of instability, because even during times of war and conflict, be it intra-conflict or interstate conflict, women end up being more in the refugee centers. They end up being affected more, women and children. So it looks like the women are at the receiving end of the outcomes of instability and of disrupted peace. But also, what role do women have to play in emancipating themselves? Because I have been told by some people that there are women who believe that if your husband beats you, then he loves you. Yeah. And that kind of thinking has encouraged men to actually maybe, it has created complacency from the women, because of the belief that, only a man who loves you gets to beat you and gets to be violent on you. So if a man doesn't love you, then he won't beat you, he won't care about you. So do you think that some of these perceptions that women have actually played a role in encouraging gender-based conflict and domestic violence at that level? And if so, how do you think women can emancipate themselves from that kind of really, I don't know how to call it, but that thinking really that is not very desirable for peace?
Thank you so much. I really don't know the types of women that think beating is a love language, but if a woman is my type and myself, you don't raise your hand on me. Raising your hand on me means that you don't love me, you don't respect me, and you don't treat me as I should be treated as a woman. So I don't encourage women to be beaten as a sign of love. Man, there are various ways of showing your woman that you love her. Take her out, buy her gifts, show her love, respect her opinion. Most importantly, there is this culture whereby most men think that women are inferior and they shouldn't contribute to conversations, they shouldn't contribute to ideas. Like at home, they shouldn't contribute to the economic ideologies. That's wrong. Please involve your women in your plans, dear men, and stop beating women. It's unacceptable. It's not a love language, if we may say. Don't popularize this as I'll have to beat my wife so that my wife will understand that I love her. No, please don't. We don't. That's not how we receive our love from you guys. So it should be stopped. And violence has never been a mean to answering or bringing about peace. We just need to break the violent cycle by practicing empathy and forgiveness. If you agree with me, let me put it in a home setting. If a man disagrees with a woman, try to understand what has happened. Dialogue, sit together, put things on a table. See, tell her, here you did wrong. You shouldn't have said it this way. You shouldn't have done it that way. Maybe, some of these mistakes happen because we don't know. Ignorance or lack of knowledge. But the person tried to do it in a different way, but then it didn't work out the way you expected. That's a misunderstanding. And the misunderstanding shouldn't be collected by violence. There are many ways. Try to understand. Try to have some compassion in you. Maybe this person was trying to do something better, but they failed. Then try to forgive. Forgiveness should be at the center of peace building because it's really the pivot of it. Because the extremism of any form of violence is really a human disease, and it starts small. It starts by hating. Start hating. You hate a certain culture. You hate a certain behavior. You hate a certain person. You hate a certain race, and before long, it was already slipped into the extremism part of it. And all this can be weakened by something small as uniting the community. We need to live in a free world whereby one is free to express themselves, but respect the others. Respect that what you're saying is good, but then doesn't mean that it has to be taken up by everyone. Aristotle said that it is a mark of an educated mind to be able to entertain a thought without accepting it. So it doesn't matter what I've said. If you don't accept it, don't take it up. But if you don't accept it, don't fight me who has said it. Agree to disagree peacefully. That way, we will fight all the toxic narratives and the common misconceptions that are in our community and that always drive towards conflict and violence. Over to you.
Okay, Lucky, thank you.
Hi, Moses.
Yes, hello. Yes,
Uh,
Barekye.
Some brief comment on what Simo was talking about.
Okay.
The issue of gender is contributing much to the violence we are experiencing nowadays. Of recent, have been keen following the issues in Albertine region where the oil is being extracted. There is this issue of compensation, which has increased on gender-based violence in the area. So you find that when the compensation comes, it's only men who can access and use it. And you find that when the men are given that compensation, they don't use it to the intended purposes. So the issue of access and control, if, as Sime said, if we cannot respect each and everyone, because we have seen many families who have developed just because of women. Women, I usually say, women are the custodians of homes and they are good planners and managers. So the moment we appreciate that we have equal rights, we have equal access, that's when we shall build sustainable peace. Because now currently, you find that men have to do everything. They want to overtake everything. They are just neglecting their women behind. So in a nutshell, please, the issue of respect is very important. If we all have access and control, I think we shall have a very big peace. And again, I want to say that men are also beaten somehow, somewhere, but they don't talk. So there are some men who tell you just secretly that, my wife beat me last night, but they don't talk. So they are also suffering somehow, somewhere. So we need to respect each and everyone's lives.
Yeah, thank you, Barekye. You bring in a very interesting aspect. The men who suffer quietly because society has told them that men don't cry, okay? Men are strong, men are masculine in nature, so you shouldn't cry. I think those men need to come out and, speak out in cases where they're also being abused in their homes. Let me bring in Comrade Ramson. Ramson, the role of international institutions in building peace. I know that the United Nations has a Security Council, of which its membership is of course questionable, but we won't go into its membership. We know that there is the African Union, okay, that is established, and I believe part of its responsibility is in terms of building peace and cohesion amongst African states. But you also know that there is the principle of sovereignty, that these international institutions can only do so much in terms of influencing the domestic relations, the domestic power struggles in these respective countries. So speak to the fact that the role of international institutions like the African Union and the United Nations in building peace, both at interstate level, but also at domestic interstate, at domestic intrastate level. So speak to the role of international institutions in terms of peace building.
Okay, thank you so much. Thank the panelists once again. All right, talking about the role of international institutions in the promotion of peace. First of all, I want to congratulate what the international institutions are doing in terms of the nation, in terms of the African Union. But on the other hand, again, I will say, in as much as they are playing a key role, but there are equally some lapses, because you bear with me that conflict situations in which the international system or those who are suffering the effects of those conflicts are calling on the international them to respond, but their response always take time. And this is because, you know, every state have a sovereignty. And because of the sovereignty of these states, it is very difficult for these international institutions to breach the sovereignty of the state and come immediately into reacting into ongoing situations. I want to take, for instance, this the Rwanda genocide instance. That was a genocide that, had it been, there was direct connection or direct intervention from the international system into the Rwandan economy, I don't think that genocide actually would have happened. But because there are these barriers in the name of sovereignty, that you cannot intrude into one's sovereignty without actually being granted that permission, we saw what happened. So the international community or the international institutions, however, they are playing a part. But I think that there is still a lot that they need to do. Now, for instance, let me take a glaring example. The situation in my country, Cameroon. It's close to 6 to 7 years that my country is faced with a conflict in the English-speaking regions, the two English-speaking regions of my country. And since 2016, there have been calls for the international community to intervene. But yet the international community, they cannot just come in and start intervening because Cameroon is a sovereign state. So I think that it is high time that the international community try to devise certain rules, certain mechanisms to see that, yes, if a country, if a state is being placed in a situation or in a state of a conflict, and they want to intervene, and let they call on the government of that country, maybe for a certain number of time, to sit on a round table or to seek for possible solutions to those conflicts, and the government of that country do not respond. Because I am talking on the side of the government, because the government, they are the sole actors of the state. The government does not respond, then they should come in. Because the moment they keep procrastinating and saying, oh, we don't have authority, we cannot come in because the state have not given us the go ahead, that is how people keep dying. That is how people keep get involved. They are caught up in what is being known as a conflict trap. You know, when I talk of a conflict trap, this is a situation in which people just get up. Somebody will just get up and just feel like, oh, I want to kill. They just pick up arms and they keep killing and going without even realizing that they are killing human beings. So I think the international community or the international institutions, they still have a lot to do. They shouldn't just be like, let me use the words that was used maybe in those days, like a paper tiger. They just keep talking, they talk more on paper rather than the action. So we need more of the action rather than just the written part of it, because they are actually doing something, but they are not doing it to the fullest. We need more of their action rather than what they are saying, because they keep talking and doing less of what is required of them. Thank you.
Wow, Ramson, thank you very much. That was very elaborate. To the audience and the viewers there, kindly put your question in the chat box. I will surely be glad to pick it up and then direct it to one of the panelists, or if it is a general question, then I'll also be very swift to do so. But by all means, we are moving towards the end of this particular show, and I'll just have one more question for each and every one of you, and then shall be able to summarize. And let me begin with Barekye. Barekye, in your earlier submission, you brought in the aspect of alcoholism, and this triggered me to think about the mental health report that we just saw being released in our country. So the social economic infrastructure of our country, where people are under duress. And because if 14 million of Ugandans are actually mentally ill, then it means that they are prone to actually violent actions. So the issue of mental health, I think, needs to be addressed. So do you think that there needs to be, we must establish more guidance and counseling centers so we can address the issue of mental health, and therefore we don't have people who are going to attack another person, not because they want, but because of a certain misconnection in their mental health? So just respond to that and also give us your final words on the show. Then I'll do the same for everyone else. So respond to the question and give us your last words on the show, and then we shall move on. So Barekye, that's yours.
Thank you, Moses. And you are 100% right. Recently, you saw the Ministry of Transport announcing that all border colleagues should go for mental checkup. They were staged there in Kamucha. I used to find them there. So I had to look for one of my border colleagues. I asked him, but you guys, the thing is you'll be doing on the road. You be safe, are you normal or what? The guy told me about from 100%, you find that 70% of them, they are mentally disturbed. I asked him, you narrow this to your border stage. Out of 20 people that are there, how many of you go on road when you are very safe? The boy told me, like, out of 20, like only 5. They are the ones who don't drink when they are going to ride. They are the ones who don't do all these things. So I'm totally convinced when you talk about the guidance and counseling centers, they are very important and very necessary. When you narrow it to village level, do you think we still have counselors who can handle these cases? They are not. There are cases which shouldn't go to police stations. There are cases which should be handled community level. But due to the fact that we lack these counselors in our systems, and even those who are there, they have no capacity, they have no knowledge about how to handle these conflicts. We have faced it. You find even a smaller issue is taken to the police, handled by police, and we are giving them a very headache. So if we establish these counseling and mental health centers at village levels, trust me, we shall achieve what we want. Finally, I want to say that peace building is a process. Peace building is a process. It is not an event that you wake up tomorrow and accomplish it. We have to appreciate that we have to take steps so that we build sustainable peace. The second thing, the government of Uganda should establish a fund specifically for peace building. Peace building should be a priority area in this country. If we don't address it, then the more challenges are coming. Finally, I call upon youth, my fellow youth, please, violence is not the way how we should handle our issues. However much the country have allowed it to be the way how they can listen and respond. I can tell you now people are using violent ways, not because they want, but just because it is a language that the country can hear. So the government has to do some mindset change and improve on their systems. Let the system be transparent. Let me be in a position as a person to access each and every office I want. The moment we don't address that, we shall keep in these violent situations. People, both elder and now this afternoon, I saw one of the former presidential candidates being stopped from moving out. Now you can imagine. So we should enjoy the same freedom as a country, but the moment they discriminate, that means other ways will be used and they will be violent, which will not build our country. I thank you so much, Moses and team at CCG. Thank you for always giving us this platform. We are learning a lot, and let's do more. Thank you so much.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Gerald Barekye. That was an amazing way to conclude. Let me go to Mr. Kaduyu. Kaduyu, my question to you, then of course you'll give us your final remarks, is that the role of security organs. Because when we speak about peace, it is somehow tied to security, because peace exists maybe where there is strong security systems. And these strong security systems are not only tied to the artillery, to the guns, and to the pistols and the platoons, but also there is a psychological security that actually, if you have people who are psychologically trained, then you won't need guns to maintain security. But in Uganda's context today, it looks like the biggest guarantee or the biggest guarantor of security are the security apparatus rather, that is the police and the military and things like that. But over time and again, we have seen some pocket cases of high-handedness of people who are supposed to instill peace, law and order, and being the orchestrators of violence and of non-peaceful means of resolving conflict. So the question is, speak to the role of security organs in terms of building or breaking peace. Then also you'll give us your final remarks on the show. Mr. Kaduyu, that is yours.
Yeah, thank you so much. But first, before I go to answering my question, I would like to say one of my brothers raised something really very critical. He said that some of the most violent people are the most poor, and I want to say that is actually very wrong. Because I don't think Bin Laden was a poor person. I don't think Hitler was a poor person. I don't think the orchestrators of the Hiroshima and Nagasaki were really very poor people. So people become violent because they are vulnerable, not necessarily because they are poor. So if we tend to ignore some of the important factors that lead people to violence, and like the deep divisions within our communities, the gender, differences, those that frustrate the efforts to address challenges of socioeconomic justice. So if we always put it to the fact that poor people are the most violent, this country would be on fire right now. And I think we need to be really very careful when you say that. And also the other issue of the intervention, of the external intervention by the international organizations. I want to say that we really have to be very careful with that, because we've seen where these institutions are used by self-seekers, who tend to change governments to see that communities are violent, and we really, until we build trust within these institutions, until they start to work for the common people, that's when we will say that they have the right to have a say in what happens in the different contexts. But before that, I think we have a very long way to go. Like you see what happened in Iraq, what happened in these international institutions, they went very dumb and nothing happened, and most people have died out of their actions, so, or inaction, I would say. So we really need to be very careful. So back to my question, I think with the role of the security, we know quite well that when we want to have effective security control over any other community, or we have to understand that these are people who come from our communities. So how have our communities brought up people who represent us in those institutions? These are our sons and daughters. They are part of what we have brought up as a community. We are a community which is characterized by trauma, a lot of misunderstandings, and it gets in a way of building effective partnerships that are needed to prevent violence. There is no, we tend to ignore the importance of building trust between the communities and the security apparatus. Like you say, we need to see that we put spaces where there is dialogue between the security agencies, for example, and the communities. I know of the community policing, approaches that are used to prevent violence. How do we empower our security personnel, for example, to understand their role in promoting human rights and preventing abuses while they do their work. How do we engage them to know that the use of kinetic methods all the time to quell violence or to quell demonstrations is not something that really works. That we engage in dialogue to build mutual trust, to build tolerance, to build understanding, and bring communities to an understanding that we can move forward together with our differences and build peace. So my last word, I would say, building peace is really something that is very possible. And effective violence prevention evolves from the synergy between communities, policymakers, and all the other important actors. So if we need to build peaceful communities, we must understand that all these differences that we have are part of our strength, and we must work together to ensure that each voice is respected. Everyone has a space. We are inclusive in our approaches, in our governance, in our socio-economic structure. We promote social justice, and that's how we'll be able to promote peace in our communities. Otherwise, if there is no mutual trust, if there is no communication, if we don't build spaces that give young people the voice, then I think we'll be counterproductive in our approaches to building violence-free communities. Thank you so much for giving me an opportunity. And I believe that everyone is playing an important role. So please, building peace means building peace-loving men and women. Let's continue doing that at our grassroots level, but also reminding those in charge that they have a role to play. Thank you.
Wow. Thank you very much. That has been very amazing from you, Mr. Kaduyu. Let me call in Lucky. Lucky, two things. One is, what is the role of women in terms of peace building at society level? Then also your final remarks on this show. Lucky, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much. I think with gender equity, I think the same role the women will play is the same role the men will play. So we need to have a level grounded and know that what a woman contributes, a man also contributes. And what a man contributes, a woman can contribute. So I think we need to work so hard in including the women at the center of it all, involve them in decision making, involve them in planning for the community, because they are the mothers. They don't just mother babies, but they mother the community, and that is where it starts from. Let us respect them, and I urge all women to stand up and be heard. The current government has really done a lot in uplifting the women and giving them the floor. And I think it is our time to utilize the platforms and be heard and decide for not only ourselves, but for the community, because we understand it better. First of all, we are the ones who give birth to men and women. So we know what, where the triggers are. So if the women are at the center of it all, trust me, there will be peace in the community, there will be peace at home, there will be peace in the nation. And that is where it all begins. Again, I want to tap on anyone that for long we have really committed to the golden rule to memory, but we have failed to practice it. I urge everyone to let us intentionally treat others the way we wish to be treated. Whether it's a man, whether it's a woman, whether it's a child, whether it's a youth, whether it's an elderly, let us treat others the way we wish to be treated. And I urge everyone to always listen. And this kind of listening, we should just engage in dialogues with the open mind and intent to understand others. Now that is what makes communication complete. Other than listening, trying to reply. So if I listen to someone, even if they have a different ideology or a different view from mine, I will understand their point of view. And that is where the unity will begin from. Let us make the world a little more harmonious, understanding, a little more tolerant with one another, and ultimately peaceful. You too can make a difference, and it all starts from you as an individual. Thank you so much, Civic Space, for the opportunity to share out our views on peace building. Thank you.
Oh, wow. Thank you very much, Lucky. Finally, to Mr. Ramson. Ramson, the world is continuously becoming interdependent. Uganda needs something from Kenya. Kenya needs something from Tanzania. And the cycle continues. The world is becoming continuously interdependent. So speak to two things. One, do you think that interdependence with its growing nature is going to play a role in terms of building peace? Because the more I need you, then the more I see no need for being an adversary. The more I see no need for being at war with you, because tomorrow I will need something that you have, which I don't have. So speak to the aspect of interdependence and how it could be an optimistic way to look at resolving peace. Then also your final words on the show. And of course, being our international guest, I'll give you the opportunity to give us the final word on the show as well. So Ramson, the floor is yours.
Okay, Moses, thank you again once more. All right, talking about interconnectedness in the area of building peace, I want to first of all carry us a bit to the 17th Sustainable Development Goal that came about in 2015 as a result of the meeting of the General Assembly. We see goal 17 talks of, that is the interconnectedness. It means that if those goals, if those 15 or the 16 goals have to be achieved, there is need for collective action. That too goes with peace building. If indeed the world wants to enjoy peace, then there is need for collective effort. There is need for interconnectedness. There is need for international connectivity between states, between individuals. For instance, just like what we are doing now, we have connected from different areas, and we are discussing the issue of peace building. One cannot grow in isolation, because just like you rightly said, Mr. Moses, you might need something that I have that you don't have. You will need to come to me to have it. On the other hand, I might need something that you have and I don't have. You might need to come to me for that. So for us to grow as one, we need to hold each other's hand, not looking down on anyone's culture, not looking down on anyone's language, not looking down on the dressing of anybody, not looking down or not saying my culture is superior than your culture, not saying because I am white, you are not supposed to mingle with me because I am black. We have to look at the focus, which is peace, living together in peace. We have to forget about the idea of, oh, I am from this area, I am from this, I am talking this, I am doing this, and you are doing that. We have to forget about that. We have to see each other equally. We have to treat each other equal. We have to respect each other. We have to respect each other. We have to flow with each other accordingly, because we were being created and we have different ideologies. It is only when we bring those ideas together that we can be to do something better. So it is high time we stop looking down on others, because indeed the world has become a global village that we cannot do without the other. But shouldn't take the fact that somebody is depending on us, maybe on a particular thing, take that as an opportunity to outlook that person, or to want to trample on that person. Or we should take an opportunity and say, because this person is coming to me for help, it is a place to me to do just as I like. Or we shouldn't take it as an opportunity to say,
because this country is faced in a conflict situation, and people are running into my country, I have the right to treat them just as I like. No, it is high time we throw back all those ideologies and embrace the culture of peace. Embracing the culture of peace, however, doesn't mean that we look down on everybody or we sideline some people. Because just like it was earlier mentioned by one of the panelists about youth engaging in so many illegal activities, it is because the youth have so far been sidelined in the area of decision making, in the area of peace building processes, even the women. So there is need for connectivity. There is need for everybody. There is need for all of us, everybody, to hold hands together, being it the women, being it the men, being it traditional rulers, being it religious authorities, being it the government or whoever institutions, organizations, as one people, not looking at necessarily lines that separate us in the names of territorial boundaries. We don't need to look at those lines. We need to forget about those lines and look at ourselves as human beings and treat each other with the humane spirit. See the problem of the next neighbor to be your own problem. Don't say because my neighbor is facing conflict, I don't care. So far as I am fine, I don't care. I don't need to look what is happening to them. No, there is time for us as a country, as a continent, as a world, to stand up together as one, speak as one. We know that it's not going to be easy, but I believe gradually, beginning with us as individuals, beginning from the domestic level, and gradually, we will see that this will be realized. For it is often said, if you want to change the world, you have to start by changing your own self. So for this to actually be achieved, we need to start with our own self, loving those we come in contact with every day, trying to see how we can handle situations between them in a lovely way. It's not only through force that we can achieve certain situations. It is not only through the use of force that we can equally prove how powerful we are. There are other means, but it is time to hold our hands as a family, as a global family, to see into it that we promote the culture of peace. Not only promoting it, but actually living it as a people. So I would just want to thank the Civic Space TV so much for the opportunity granted to me to be a part of this wonderful and amazing platform. I want to say it's quite actually, I don't know how to say it, but I am so excited that I was able to meet with like-minded people all the way in Uganda. I mean, it was so wonderful, and I hope to meet with you again time and time and again. Thank you all so much.
Oh, wow. That was what a way to conclude this conversation. Thank you very much, Comrade Ramson, Comrade Kaduyu, Comrade Lucky, and Comrade Gerald. Thank you all for your time. Thank you for sparing the time to share your views on this particular conversation. To our viewers, it's always amazing to have you on the show. From us to you, thank you very much, and see you next week, same time, same place. Bye-bye.